Today's topic is about narcissistic parents and parenting, the effect of narcissistic parenting on your personality and on your generations to come. That cannot be comprehended. That cannot be even visualized by a normal person. What we are talking is based on the research of years and years. But what we're going to try to understand, it cannot be validated or infused inside you by one person, or it cannot be understood by one person alone. So you have to understand the effect of narcissistic parent or parenting stays with you forever. It goes into your next generation, your relationships, your work environment, everywhere you take it with you. The parents' self image, validation, and control take absolute priority because the parents, they see you as their own image and they treat you as it is. They don't want to create you. That is very rare where they create you as you want to be. This creates a toxic environment of conditional love, gaslighting, triangulation, and emotional manipulation all over your history of trauma and for your future, where you don't have any control apart from being becoming the worst version of your parents. Now, moving forward, there are going to be certain questions around this that we have researched on this topic, that how does it affect about the narcissistic parenting. Number one question that comes in mind is, what exactly is narcissistic parenting? Narcissistic parenting occurs when a parent see their children primarily as a source of narcissistic supply, admiration, a status, or an extension of themselves. The most important part that I understand is they see themselves, their children, as extension of themselves, their own personality. That is the reason they want to manipulate them and make an extra or extended version of themselves. The children emotion needs are ignored and punished if they try to deviate from their own pathway what parents have created. That will be punished. And if they conflict with the parents image, because parents want to create another image, a copy, a improved version that is also narcissistic of their children, and if they deviate, the agenda is changed. Love is conditional inside these kind of relations of parent and children. Why? Because they will only be praised if they are following a narcissistic effective pattern, and often withdrawal and punished. So you have to understand that these things take a hell lot of effect on generations to come. The next question that comes to the mind is, how does a narcissistic parent typically behave towards the children? Now we have decided what it is. How do they behave? The very common behavior include criticism. Everything they will do is just criticism. There is nothing positive, and it is disguised as help. Okay, they are criticizing and they will keep saying, we're trying to help you, we're trying to improve you. And that is the worst possible thing that you see in our everyday life with our relations. This is the first factor that you should understand. When someone is being narcissistic, they will say, we're trying to improve you. They will try to gaslight you always. So, this triangulation, like pitting siblings against each other, look, your sister or brother is very much better than you. Why are you not like them? This kind of a behavior, this gaslighting, emotional blackmailing, and taking credit for the children's success, that I have made you this success, while blaming them for failures. Now, wherever the part of success comes up, they will say, this is because of us, because we made you like this, we trained you like this. And wherever the failure is, they will try to gaslight them, and they will just put all the blame, even their own failures, they will put the blame on the children. That's the reality of life. So they often compete with their own children to become jealous of their achievements. They don't see a happiness when their children are growing. Whenever they see a child is growing above them, they start taking it as a jealousy factor. They start taking it as a competition, and they start demotivating them for certain parts where they could have achieved a lot more than what their own capacity was. They can't see their children even above them. They will pretend that, but inside they are jealous of their own children innately. So another question that comes up is, what are the most common long-term effects? Because we are going in a pattern. What it is, How does it work? Now, what will it affect? What are the long term effects on adult children? Now, you start from a child, a newborn, then you grow up, then you go towards adulthood. What what are you shaped as in adulthood if you have faced narcissistic parenting? What will you become? So you should understand, so you can try to change yourself and others as well. You can try to help others as well. Now, many struggle for low self esteem. They see chronic anxiety, means they see that we are not worth it. They are under depression, always inside, and they have an inability to identify their own needs, that we cannot do these things, we are struggling in a way that we are not better than anyone else. They are always incomplete. They don't feel the completion in them as a human being. They often have people pleasing tendency, that I have to make everyone happy, because they are used to of that. They have to make their parents happy all the time, otherwise they will be punished or they will be disliked. So, poor boundaries and difficulty forming healthy for romantic relationships is the worst thing a person can have or face inside the adulthood. Because when they don't know what is a relationship boundary, what they have to do, they cannot create a partner with them. So, what happens when they're not able to? Because in adulthood, that's the first thing people think of, the partnership, because they want to make a girlfriend, boyfriend, or any other form of partnership. Then they move away from them because they are very much depressed. They are incomplete in themselves. And whenever they bring that part towards their partnership, that is also incomplete. So they cannot make a formal relationship, a proper relationship, a healthy relationship. The next part is, why do children of narcissistic parent often attract narcissistic partners later in life? That's a very important part. That if you have a narcissistic parent who is criticizing you all the time, demeaning you all the time, why does it happen that 95% plus their future partners will be of same nature as their parents were? Obviously, it's so standard, because people will say, no, I hate that part of my parents, I don't want to be like that. But it's not in your control, because you have been brainwashed all over your life with the same behavioral tendencies. How can you deviate from them so quickly, unintentionally? You can't. You don't know that even. It feels very similar. That's your safe zone, in fact. So the nervous system was trained to seek love through performance, not from your own inner self, what your personality is, based on your performance, how your parents have trained. Okay, if you got the good grades, you're a good child. If no, if by chance you're not able to get those grades, you should be abandoned. You should be bullied. So that emotional unpredictability is part of your training from your childhood. So you cannot say that if I want this or not. That's the part of your training. What feels like chemistry in your upcoming partner is often just a repetition of your childhood trauma and the childhood dynamics. What you think that, okay, there is so much chemistry between me and that person, that's why I want to be dependent on that person for my whole life, or bring that person into my life, because that feels so familiar. Breaking this pattern requires hell lot of energy, and it cannot be done without counseling. If someone says, I've seen a lot of people saying that, okay, we don't need counseling. Why the hell you don't need counseling? Counseling is not what they think. Oh, I'm going to be sitting down in front of someone and just talking. That's a rubbish excuse. That is rewiring your brain with the right expert. That is rewiring your brain. So without rewiring a machine, because brain is a machine in a way, but without rewiring or reprogramming your supercomputer, means your brain, how can you expect to be changing? How can you expect that you can change or adopt anything? No, the next part that comes up is that, can narcissistic parent cause post traumatic stress disorder in children or anything like that? Because whenever we see these words, we see either in news or either in movies, but we are not, this is called lack of awareness, because we don't see that PTSD can be in generations just without any war zones or any other form of trauma, because this itself is a war. This itself is a huge trauma that people are going through continuously since the time they were born. So yes, complex PTSD is extreme common, and again the word I use is complex PTSD, because this is not a normal PTSD that even I will say a veteran coming from war zone is having a PTSD. But this one is more dangerous because they have been trained since the beginning and they have been wired. That's why it is complex PTSD. It's not a normal PTSD or post traumatic stress disorder. The children experience repeatedly emotional trauma. In war zone, you know that people already know that what's coming. In children's life, they don't know that unexpected traumas every single day, and they have to come up in the form of a child. They have to face that. So symptoms that come up with this include emotional flashback, dislocation, disassociation, toxic shame, and fragmented self or fragmented self. They see that they're not complete anywhere. Many don't realize they have trauma because they were not having visible bruises. Because whenever we say that, okay, were you being hit by your parents or anything, they always say, no, we were never being hit by our parent. But they have been treated having worse emotional bruises than a physical bruise. The next question that comes up is, do children of narcissistics or narcissist parents become narcissists themselves? What you are trained of, or what you are trained inside an environment, most probably you can be, or we can be. But it's not always the case. Obviously, human nature is so resistive that sometimes we take the path of deviation, that we don't want to go with the path of our parents that was given to us. Some develop full narcissistic personality. Obviously, that's standard default behavior. But sometimes opposite routes are adopted because they become so empathetic that even they start losing others because they have become so empathetic. But that's another topic we'll discuss. Becoming so empathetic and sympathetic also, you can say, disfigures you in a way that people don't understand that value. But and that's the most powerful trait you should have. So many fall somewhere in between the narcissistic part and occasional manipulative behavior by learning by learning it as a survival tool, because they have learned that they can survive becoming this part, what they have seen inside their parent or being dealt with. So obviously they do become that part, but not always the case. So we cannot blame everyone. If your parent was narcissistic, you would be 100%, but high chances are they will have those traits always. Now, this is why we call it that whatever you are, that's how the first thing that comes, how your parents have raised you. That's the first question that comes to our mind. So how does narcissistic parenting affect sibling relationship, means your brother and sisters relationships with each other, your own blood relationships? How does it affect that? Because they are teaching you to be narcissistic not only with yourself, with your parents backwards, plus with your siblings and friends and your relationships as well. Uh, Obviously it destroys them. There's not going to be a healthy relationship because you are telling them to be mean. The narcissistic parents create golden children, but they have a scapegoat role. That competition, resentment, and betrayal is the most important part that comes up there. Betrayal is the most important part that you will see in the children of narcissistic parent, because that when there is a betrayal element, that okay, to survive you can betray, and you can use it as a survival tactic, you start using it on your siblings as well. Adult siblings may remain divided or strange because the parent continues to triangulate even into adulthood. What happens, they try to, like the adult children, what they do is they try to avoid their own siblings. They try to not to help them, not to be in touch with them, because their parents have taught them that speculative behavior, that they have to be alone to survive. They cannot just rely on their siblings, or they cannot be like a person who can always be available for their siblings. So it's a innate nature now. They can't help it with staying away from their siblings even. Now, what is the biggest myth about narcissistic parent? The biggest misconception, they can change if they just understand or love more. That's a myth. They cannot be changed. Parents cannot be changed because that's their innate nature. You can teach them to behave artificially in a certain way. That's human nature. That's a myth, that they can change if they just understand or love more. No, they cannot be changed. True narcissistic personality disorder involves a structured lack of empathy and deep denial. They don't have any empathy inside them. That's the most important part of my book. and my upcoming books as well. That's always the core of my philosophy, is that you cannot change a human nature. You can force them to act in a certain way in a certain environment, but you cannot change them. Even if you wish to, you can wish as human, that's part of your nature, but you cannot make sure they behave if they are taught. Parents have developed, when do you become parent? At adult age, and they have developed a very strong personality at that part. So so most of them are capable of recovering with a genuine therapy, even with, and it will require a long term therapy to change them even. So if we expect that just with someone telling them to love their children, they will change, they will never change. Now, the next part is what healing looks like for adult children of narcissistic parent. What is the pattern of healing? What are the symptoms if they are healing from it? First of all is acknowledgement that they have to understand they were abused. They have to understand that they were gaslighted over the period of time. Only then the improvement part comes next, after the acknowledgement. And that is the part for everything, wherever you want to move to the next step, is the acknowledgement. Key step, what are the key steps including in that part, in that pathway? You have to go slow. You have to go away from these kind of personality. You have to go less contact with this kind of personalities, because even with 1 minute of contact they can trigger the same pathway of whole childhood. So removing these kind of parents and uh, siblings, if they are not, or people who in a relationship even, because right now we are particularly talking about the parents. You have to remove these kind of people from your life to be improving in the first part. And learning to self validate, you have to learn that the validation is from your within, not from someone else. You have to understand the validation you seek is from within. That's the first part. You have to stop getting the validations from anyone else, then you start improving. Not even in the narcissistic manner pattern, or in every aspect of life, when you start depending on yourself. Now the next question that comes is, what would you say to someone who's just realizing that their parent is narcissistic? Obviously, even to listen to this about your parent, or to think about your parent, that okay, if someone tells me my parents were narcissistic, I will be maybe angry even at first, on the person who's telling me. How dare you? That realization, that acknowledgement is the first part. You cannot just say that first, that if you are telling someone that you're living in a narcissistic environment, that they will accept it. You have to tell them very very carefully. So confusion and guilt you feel are normal. This is going to be the normal part, where you're going to see that no, they are not narcissistic. My parents, my co-parenting, or whoever is raising me up is narcissistic. That's very natural to understand. That's by design, because we are human to understand that this is a person who is upbringing doing the upbringing for me. They cannot be against me. That's not the part of reality. You are not crazy about this, not understanding, that if you're not understanding, or ungrateful, or too sensitive. No, your pain is valid. You have a valid pain. So the healing is also possible. You have to understand, once you accept it, the healing becomes very easy. But it requires choosing your own peace over other pleasing and manipulation. So you have to understand that you cannot rely only on the pleasing of others. You have to understand it depends on you, that if you decide that you have to grow, you can easily grow. If you decide that you can change yourself, you can. But the only thing starts from acknowledgement. So acknowledge that if someone around you is narcissistic, they have this behavior where they only judge you based on performance, you should be staying away.